No. Uh, all right. Let's see. It's, I think, desynced in the other direction now. Good. Let's try this now, and we'll see. Success! All right, cool. Hey, if anybody's still actually hanging out here, we should actually be, like, golden now. Or maybe not. Nope, we're good. Okay, cool. All right, cool. I'm gonna try to, like, mix some music after all of that BS that just happened. So just briefly, some background on the project. So this whole thing took the better part of, goodness, like 4 years. It started in like spring of 2017 and wrapped last November. So a long time, frankly too long. And I was thinking about it earlier, and that averages out to about a song per year, which is not, it's not quite the like 8 years between Boston's second and third albums, but you know, or maybe Chinese Democracy, but it's getting up there. But so what we're gonna do first, so we're gonna switch over to our DAW here, and we should be, just for fun, let's see if we have sound. We should, but you know, just for fun. Cool. Yeah. But I'm definitely gonna have to. I'm definitely gonna have to not be talking while music is playing, because that's not gonna go well for us. But so first things first. This is the whole session. This is literally hot off the press. The mix from the record. Basically completely unaltered, other than I did a couple things to set this up for this stream earlier, but there's a lot going on here. It is a very busy session. And I'll walk through later on how everything is kind of set up here, but there's a whole lot of drums, whole lot of guitars. This is all, like, all these blue ones are all just lead guitars. And then one of the things that's particularly challenging about this song is there is a massive amount of, like, just sound effects, weird, you know, creepy sounds, layering, all kinds of craziness going on in here. So, like, just going into this part, like, scary strings, it's literally just that, like, orchestra, like, you know, locust wing sound, and whole lot of craziness. There's, you know, these like weird creepy guitars and all kinds of stuff. So part of the challenge of mixing this song was sort of getting all of that stuff to kind of gel, and, you know, a lot of that is really just like burying it, and, you know, being very like surgical with EQ, and taking away, especially, you really cannot clutter up bass frequencies with stuff like this, because, you know, it'll just go nuts. But real quick here, what we'll start with is, just realized I had that track soloed. I'll just go ahead and play the entire tune, and then, and again, this is the mix from the record. All the same plugins are active, all that stuff. So just to get a sense of, like, you know, where we're I guess not where we're starting, but where I finished last time around. So here we go. Alright, you get the picture. And there's a bunch of sound effects and the kid version of me yelling about making music. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and right now just start taking these plugins out. And is anything I need to keep? Actually, don't think so. We're just gonna not even looking at the settings. We're just gonna kill all of them. And yeah, that's a delay. We don't care. Reverb. We don't care. Reverb. Drum bus. Actually, I think that's just a volume knob. Yes. And one of the things that I ended up doing quite a bit with this session was actually just putting these Slate plugins in here with a volume knob in the, rather than using the track fader, just because it's like totally a psychological thing. It's a volume knob. The track slider is a volume knob. It's all the same thing, but something about seeing the faders up was very comforting to me, especially, you know, when you're really trying to make these, you know, extremely, hey, what's up, the big Drew Bowski? Oh, I get it. It's a movie reference. Hey, man, what's up? How are you? We're actually destroying all of my hard work right now by taking all these plugins out. And screw it. We'll just go hard and we'll just kill everything here. And so a couple things about this session. These drums are fake. I'm sure the eagle-eared among you could probably just tell that by listening to them. They are extremely fake. Because for someone in my position who is, you know, a 100% like DIY musician, I, you know, wrote, produced, mixed, mastered this project, which I honestly don't really recommend. But, you know, honestly, if you just accept that you're programming percussion, it honestly gets a lot easier. And when you start printing down these stems, you end up with something that is really, I mean, honestly, like a best case scenario compared to what you'd get, you know, in a, you know, like DIY setup in your living room or whatever. Because, you know, realistically, most people who are like at this level, which, you know, is like, you know, guy with no followers, you probably don't have access to, you know, high level studio equipment, can't afford, you know, even studio time in some cases. So you're really kind of just got to work with what you got. And if I remember right, this was I think the Superior Drummer Metal Foundry library was what we were working with here. And with some samples layered in, but we will get there, I promise. And so a couple other things. This bass, so there's two bass tracks here. One is, you know, your classic bass DI. I think that we're all roughly familiar with. Just trying to make sure that we don't have any other processing on here. Oh, and one other thing is we're going to kill these ones off the master track. We'll leave the limiter in place because we're going to need this to be pretty loud, I think. But we have a DI bass. Which, I'll tell you, that's a DI sound that I am very happy with. Like, there's really not, definitely could use a ton of compression, but like, it's kind of hard to argue with that sound. That's pretty mean, just right off the bat without any processing on it. But we've also got here, I ended up, this is literally the only place on the record that so this is, so that's actually my, there's the track label. It's my 5150 that is behind me out of frame. But it's literally the only place my actual physical 5150 ended up on the entire record, which is surprising, but So, you put these two together and there's your kind of bass grit track. So, I mean, honestly, when you're starting with like a healthy balance of those two, you're already doing all right. And what else we got here? We've got oh yeah, and then the bass at the beginning of the song is actually a couple of layered synths. Just some, weird sounds I could find layered on top of each other. And then it was actually kind of fun. I ended up having them double the little fast guitar line here. And, that's all like super buried in the final mix. We've got some rhythm guitars. And I'm going to kill that anxiety-inducing plugin chain there. So one thing I did is I went back and I grabbed the original DIs that I used on the... I realize here we have this panned in the wrong direction. I went back and grabbed the original DIs because what we have here is... these are printed down from the amp sim I used, which honestly, I don't remember. I think it was Fortin Nameless, but I honestly couldn't tell you. Wow, it's pretty quiet. But I thought it'd be kind of fun to actually probably to start is actually just... We'll maybe just take those DIs and see if we can't actually get a better tone than the album tone. I think that'd be kind of fun. I won't go too terribly in depth into the rest of these. It's, it's a clean guitar sound. A lot of these are. And most of that, really, there wasn't a ton of processing on the record that I remember. And if I remember right, I used the Waves PRS amps for that. Let's kill all these. And one of the things I did, I was very intentional about how I set this session up. And, by proxy, really pretty much every session on the album. I wanted to get these really pretty much any instrument, especially the virtual instruments, things like these synths and, even the ones that are using amp sims like the guitars and stuff. I wanted to get those to a point where I had essentially like an unprocessed like version of what you would have if you had mic'd the instrument in a studio. With the obvious exception of the bass, but for these, this is sort of the raw, that's like, the raw hot off the mic amp sound. And part of that is, I think it just, it prevents you from ending up with these sessions where you have like 12 amp sims running and your computer is like coughing, trying to keep up. Especially because I very stupidly at the beginning of that project was like, yo, I'm going to just, record and mix everything in 96K. which is great and all, but it literally like doubles the amount of processing power needed. And for, honestly, a difference that I can't hear with my ears at any rate. And, by the time it hits, Spotify and by proxy your ears, it's been compressed and dithered and turned into, an MP3 file that's playing at like 320 bits. So it's just, I don't know. I'm sure you'll find somebody on Gear Sluts that will tell you that I'm an idiot and I'm talking out of my ass, and that you gotta record at 192K every time. But I don't think it's necessary. And so my current project, and I think one of those played at the beginning, but I'm re-recording the like crappy thrash album I made when I was in college at like age 20. Just for fun. It's, basically just a silly quarantine project. But I'm recording that in 48K because like, why bother, twice the hard drive space, all that shit. It's just not worth it, in my opinion. But going through here, like I said, there is a just absolute, just critical mass of just crazy weird sounds. There's pianos. Just, literally for that literal one part of the song. Some of these have automation baked in, a couple of different types of automation. I'm trying to remember what all of these were. Oh, that's right. I had the pitch. So there's some weird stuff going on here. This is a like tape stopping effect flipped backwards, and then some weird. This is the kind of thing, honestly, I'd if I were doing this now, I'd probably just print these down at this stage, because like this is a designed effect. All of these things are, I'm not going to change them at this point. It just is what it is. Anyways, so we got a whole bunch of other crap. There's scary strings. I think I went through those earlier. I honestly don't even remember what solo weird is. Oh, it's this thing. And same thing. Like this is it's literally like some guitar noodling I did at some point that I ran through a bunch of weird plugins to just turn into like a weird monster sound. And, that's the fun part, is when you get to do crap like that at like the end after you've done all the like difficult, self-esteem destroying parts of making a record. But what else we doing here? So we get all that. There's a whole bunch of like, I layered 8 swells here for some reason. I don't even really remember this. Okay, that is that. Okay, that is pretty cool. You're off the hook this time, past Dan. There's even, this is one that I'm kind of proud of. I had this, no joke, probably 15-year-old recording of my first cat purring, and I was just like looking through crap that was on my like, I just have a big old library of just shit like that I've recorded over the years and just kind of dumped in a folder, and I look through it whenever I need a weird sound, basically. And it is a cat purring, but it's been slowed down and fucked with and, messified. And then there's also me breathing in there, apparently. It's, just makes a really weird, creepy sound. That's kind of the ethos of this song, is just weird and creepy stuff. So, oops. And we have our nice little button press sound here. And what else? Oh, and then our end bus, quote unquote, which is these are same thing. These are like just me playing guitar normally, but through a delay pedal that some knobs were twisted into some very unnatural positions, and this is the result. And it's very quiet, I realize now. But that's all that this effect came from, is just like, you know, taking a delay pedal and sending it into like infinite feedback, basically. What else? So there you go. There's our song. And I'm realizing now some bad stuff is probably going to happen if I play this back. Faders up, but let's see. Let's see what this sounds like, what we're working with here. Definitely starting from what I would characterize as a place. I think that's safe to say. That is wild. These guitars are so quiet compared to everything else. Really sure why that is. Probably has something to do with it, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. Because what we are going to do is I think we're going to start we're just going to freaking take these and throw some amp sims on and see what the hell happens. I have tried a few times over the years, and I want to try again right now to see if I can't just put one sim on the master fader and have that like work properly. It's probably not going to work, but okay, I think that's working the way it's supposed to. So, the reason I did that is because it is a pain in the ass when you're doing this kind of very, very fine, dialed in kind of work on a track, and then you have to then go back afterwards and like migrate changes back and forth. That is always a pain in the ass. And, in the parlance of the times, ain't nobody got time for that shit. So this is my like favorite cream of the crop, you know, angry, mean metal guitar sound plugin. Fortin Cali. And I think that this is if I'm not mistaken, this is like, I mean, you know, it's an emulation of Fortin's Cali amp, but if I remember right, their design is essentially it's Mr. Fortin's version of like a Mesa like triple rack. And honestly, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with. Like, I almost, like, this is literally the default whatever, and I already almost like it better than the album tone, so we're on the right track here. Realize those need to be soloed still. So Let's see what we got here. So this defaults to having their kind of Tube Screamer knockoff activated. The tone knob on that does like nothing. I've definitely used the grind pedal a few times, but what I find is to get it in the sweet spot, you have to kind of crank it so much that you actually start losing. Shit gets so compressed that you actually start losing the pick attack on some of these really, really intricate riffs. And honestly, in like a full mix, that's just going to sound like, and you're not even going to be able to hear individual notes in that. And that's really honestly the challenge of kind of trying to tone craft for this sort of thing. One other thing I'm going to do is I think I'm going to bypass the like inline cab simulator, and I'm going to go with my, again, my standard, which is torpedo wall of sound. Again, there's something about specifically the way these IRs sound that I just like, and it's kind of hard for me to put a finger on. And like, I've got libraries of other IRs of all different types of cabs, ones that are wave files rather than like these proprietary 2-notes things. And dude, there's just something about the way these in particular like bring the pick attack out that I like, and I can't seem to find a way to replicate with other IRs. So like, I'd say that this is probably, I'm probably not using this one. Let's see what we got here. Let's switch this over to just computer. So what do we got here? So that's like a Marshall. These are like fake Engel. They're knockoff brand Engel, and then they actually did official Engel ones. Got a few different ones in here. I've actually got the Fortin cab. Let's actually try that. We'll try. We'll match up with the amp. We'll try a Fortin cab with vintage 30s. Definitely needs like low end badly. I think there we're kind of onto something. Definitely gonna be right up on it to get the, and I'll just be straight up. I need bass response in my rhythm guitars for it to feel inspired, and I don't know what it is, because I end up taking most of that bass out at the end anyway to like make it actually fit in the mix properly, but I need it. And if I don't, like if I'm miking a real cab or whatever, or if I'm jamming by myself, if I don't like feel that like chest thumping bass response when you hit a power chord, it just does not. It doesn't speak to me. So let's actually try, maybe we'll try mixing in the angle. Because even this, like, this is close, but it's, to me, very, like, it's still very, like, mid-rangey, very treble-y, and it's just not, that's probably a more modern sound, honestly, but I like just nasty, cartoonish, scooped, like, just bullshit. That's my bread and butter. Let's try this weird ribbon mic. I have no idea. That's kind of neat. What about the 421? See, even that is still, it's just not low and mean enough for me. But nah. All right, I think we need to probably, and actually let's mess with the amp a little bit before we come back to this. I know I'm doing this all backwards, but this is honestly kind of how I work. I kind of just jump around all over the freaking place. Maybe not recommended, but it is what works for me. So I'm going to try getting rid of Fortin's boost pedal, and I'll try this Green Reaper, which is like an emulator. It's emulating a tube screamer, so we'll get that like classic combo of a triple rack and a tube screamer. Oh God, yes. Yes. There we go. There it is. And one of the other things that I really kind of had to learn through trial and error is when you're working this way, when you've tracked DIs and you're like sitting here and you're tone sculpting, it really helps to take the input, which is what that's doing is that's basically just controlling how hard your guitar signal is hitting the front of the amp. And especially with these ones, with the Neural DSP sims in particular, you really get that kind of realistic way in which a tube amp reacts if you, say, had a volume pedal in front of it and you're able to really surgically control how hard your guitar is hitting the front of the amp, because it makes all the difference in the world, just that handful of dB between like too much and just enough, because you'll hear all sorts of people complaining about young and inexperienced guitar players who will play with like way too much gain, and I tell you, if you're going to get into like doing these kind of like Dino, Fear Factory, Meshuggah kind of riffs, it's not so much like don't use tons of gain, but it's you have to compensate in other ways. You have to make sure that it's still clear, and it really helps to basically just do this and just sit and like troubleshoot it and kind of, all right, what is each of these things doing? And you'll see that I am always, as I go through here, I'm always toggling things off and on just to like make sure, okay, what I just did that actually do something, or is it just entirely like placebo effect when I hit that button, you know? But right here, so there you go. This is when there's too much gain and it's just a wall of static. I'll be honest, I don't know how much I want to change that at all. I think we hit, I think we got it. That is sick. I love it. Let's compare. Nope. Something bad happened there. Oh, I know what happened. We have an amp trying to go through an amp. My bad. Whoops. Nope, that is not what we intended to do at all. And one more time. Now I'll say this, the older ones, these right here, the original tones are like much closer to what I would consider like final mix ready. The rest of this is gonna, I mean, this is gonna require some work. But holy shit, does that ever sound good. I really, really like that. So one thing we're going to have to do here real quick is lower the volume, because I think we're clipping the plugin out a little bit. Just trying to get to some different riffs here. Oh, that's nasty. I love it. Love it. I get way too excited about good guitar tones, let me tell you. These are terrible drums. And I'll tell you right now, what, like, a ton of that is coming from just this right here. I just love whatever ribbon fat is. I love everything that mic is doing, and I want more of it in my life all the time, forever. And if anybody tells you you can't marry a fake microphone inside a plugin, they don't know what they're talking about. So I'm gonna come back here, and I'm just gonna very quickly just toggle through a couple other cabs, just to, it's a little bit compulsive on my part. It's very hard for me to just stop and say, okay, that's good enough. I always want to see if, okay, will something else maybe sound better? And I admit, I like that less. There's something about the mixture between those two. Oh, I guess I gotta go back manually. Sometimes undo does not work with certain plugins, and that's kind of a pain in the ass. But let's try the Ford and Cream really quickly. For creambacks, obviously, it's not a gross joke or anything. I like that. That's so now we're getting into like hyper scoop territory. It almost sounds like Suffocation, like Pierced from Within era, which I mean I love, but maybe not quite. I feel like the regular was kind of a good mix, but somewhere here I have a Mesa cab that I kind of want to try real quick. I remember the Mesa, we were buying these actually when they came out, and I was not super impressed, but no. Nope. It's funny, the 57 is too thin and everything else is too thick, but let's try it in comparison and see. I guess I should be trying them all mixed together rather than this craziness. Shit, actually, God, I do like that. Shit, comparing them back to back, I hated that in isolation, but those two mixed together are doing something for me. And just for fun, we'll try the orange too, real quick. I don't... Nah, it's the creamback. And you know, it's something else I'll call out as a very important part of like doing this kind of work is at this point, you know, I've iterated a bunch. I'm now at the point where there's one I really like and I'm going back and forth between a few others, none of which I like as much. This is the point where it's time to stop and it's time to commit to this sound. This is the sound we're going to work with. And so what I'm actually going to do here, I'm going to save real quick, is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to print that down. So what we got to do is we're going to put these on the individual tracks. And a little bit of trickery needs to happen here because we need to set these all back to mono because we're going to render in mono. Actually, that can probably stay as is. Let's go ahead and kill it up top, but yeah, it's actually still overloading the plugin a little bit, so it's like minus 5 dB. Just trying to avoid clipping is all, because we're gonna be just. This thing is going to be running into a limiter later and a whole bunch of other crap to really kind of get that juice going. So, but yeah, no, let's go ahead and do it. I think this is I think we're in a good place with this sound. And you know what? I'll maybe save a new version, but I'm going to commit to this even further by, those are gone. And Nevermore here. And let's see. All right, those are panned correctly, so we're just going to go ahead and render each of those. And oh god, I am sorry about that. Something weird is happening here, and I'm not sure exactly what on earth that was, but we're gonna have to make double, triple sure that we... Yeah, I guess the selection window doesn't really matter, because we're gonna... Yeah, okay. Because we're gonna do... What we're gonna end up doing here is something weird's going on with this session where when I'm trying to render, you saw it popped up and said it was gonna render for 9 hours. That's not right. It should take like a minute to render all of that, and so something weird's going on. Let's try crop project to selection. That should, in theory, fix that issue. Now let's try rendering these bad boys. And there you have it. So what I'm going to do is, and straight up, we'll maybe save, and, you know, honestly, when you're confident enough, you don't even really need to do this. I'm going to save a new version, like, just in case I want to go back. But at this point, I'm, like, making a commitment here. We're not going back. And these, I'm just going to delete the plugins entirely, delete the DIs. Bam, there you go. There's your guitars. Okay. So, and I wanted to walk through, I just wanted to take a minute to walk through basically how I set this mix up. There's a ton of tricks in here I'm using that I just like pretty blatantly lifted from Nolly's Creative Live class, which I cannot recommend enough. It like very frequently goes on sale for like $15, and it is, you know, if you're starting at the beginning and you sort of have a basic understanding of like how to set up and balance a mix, that'll really just take you to the next level in terms of like, okay, what do I do now? So I mean, boom, right here. So one of the things that I saw him doing is sub drops. And this is a designed effect that I made myself, and they're buried way underneath the mix. But I literally took a sample of a like grenade explosion and then just, you know, layered it on top of like a sub bass sound. Boom. But it's literally, it's minus 21. It is buried. And basically all it does is any of these moments where like the whole band kind of comes exploding in, it just, to that like split second, it just adds a tiny little bit of oomph. Actually, it's kind of impossible to hear while it's like this, but you get the idea. And really quickly, I'm actually going to remove this completely because this is master fader automation, which we 100% will not get to tonight, because that is a last step. So a couple other things, I made a point of like having everything kind of set up in the session with markers. Everything is very clearly labeled what it is, because again, when you're dealing with, however many, we're looking at 108 tracks. So when you're at this point, everything needs to be very, very clear about what it is and what it does. Because otherwise you're going to get lost. You're going to completely get lost and you're going to be like, I don't know what's going on. And that is the worst place to be. It really is. So let's walk through really quickly. Let's walk through the structure, how this is structured. Because we're not going to start at like total 0 faders up, because generally I set all of the levels of this kind of stuff, like how loud each of the drum parts is going to be and things like that. That I all set like beforehand, normally before I actually start like a mix session, quote unquote. But I am going to take a moment here and just do some very basic like balancing. So just quickly, so we have this instrument bus here. Excuse me. And what this is for is, and we'll get to it a little bit later because I'm basically just going to like paste in settings I typically use. But this is straight up, it's a volume fader to control all of the instruments. Obviously, it's not super relevant here because this song doesn't have vocals, but in a song where I'm working with vocals, it honestly is when you're at that last stage and you're doing that last bit of balancing between trying to get those vocals to sit and not feel like they're either jumping out ahead of everything or getting buried. It honestly is helpful to have all the instruments on a fader, because you can just kind of, sometimes it's like that 0.5 dB that you need to drop in there. But also, this is where typically a little bit of mix bus compression happens. And these are two tricks that are just straight lifted from Nolly's Creative Live. And we'll go over the settings in a second, but we're going to essentially start with like a top-down EQ move where we're boosting highs and boosting lows. Because and the way he explained it is basically, the vast majority of the time when you get raw tracks, they're going to be very dark sounding. And you're going to need bass enhancement anyway. So you might as well just start at that point, boosting bass, boosting highs, because you're going to end up probably doing it on every track. So might as well just start essentially with it on every track. And then you're also, from that point forward, you're making mixed decisions based on that. And that's why when I was down here doing these guitars, I really didn't worry too much. It's actually not that bad, but those are still honestly fairly dark sounding guitars, all told. We're gonna have a high end boost that's gonna really pick up the slack. We may end up having to boost mids on those guitars, honestly, because they're very scooped sounding right now, but we'll get there. And part of it too, the other Nolly trick I stole is you basically kind of intentionally make the snare a little bit too loud. And then you put a mix bus compressor that basically only slams down on the snare. And what happens is if it's on essentially the mix bus, what's actually happening is snare hits and then the compressor comes in and just ducks the whole mix for just a second. The second the snare hits, just to make sure that that transient really cuts through, and then bam, and then you're right back to the normal level. So like in the moment, your ear doesn't even hear it, but it really is the difference between like a mix shining and just sounding like crap. But let's start here with these drums because these are going to need some work. And like we don't even have and so I've got snare reverb and parallel compression set up here, but we haven't even dialed those in yet, so I'm just going to mute those for now. So here's what our just straight raw drum sound sounds like. And so actually, wow, I forgot how much of this sound the room shells are carrying, but I think there was volume moves happening that we got rid of. So let's maybe bring those room mics down a little bit. That's probably more what we're looking for. Like you can hear this kick. That's gonna need some work. And just quickly run through all these drum sounds. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff on the kick. There is 2 different kick outs. There's a condenser, not a conditioner. We're not washing long hair. A condenser and a dynamic. And, you know, so you got one that's like a super scooped sound, and then one that's kind of a mid-rangey sound, and then you just kind of blend them together, and it's all good. And that's hilarious. My phone is ringing, and turns out my phone is my webcam. So, oops. Sorry about that, folks. Oh man, such is the life of just being totally DIY for everything. Get a kick sub. And so that particular Superior Drummer library, the Metal Foundry, like has like an Andy Sneap kick sample in it because he did a couple of the presets. And so that ended up on here because I thought it sounded cool. And snare real quick. Again, everything is stock from that library, except these 2 snare samples I took from, if I remember correctly, Get Good Drums Invasion, because I really felt like the snare needed a like pokier, crispier kind of hit. And so, you know, the Vinnie Paul signature obviously is adding a little bit of beef, and the Pearl reference is just all, you know, pokey, poke sound. Because that's right, because this is a I honestly can't even remember what kind of snare it is. I think it was a Tama brass 6.5-inch snare, and like you can hear it here. Like this is an incredibly dark snare sound. So like even with those snare wires, it's just round and deep sounding. It needs those samples badly. Because otherwise we're not really in great territory there. And really quickly as well, one of the things I did when I was printing this down, I took the extra time to basically render the drum shells and the drum cymbals in the room mics separately. And it is specifically so that they can be on separate faders and be just completely controlled and processed independently of each other. Because to me, that's like perfectly balanced right there. But if you were to say, you know, if it was at the normal level that it is in Superior, and what happens there is if you go and you try to process these rooms at all, you're going to end up with just cymbals everywhere, and it's just going to be a mess. And I actually quite literally had to go back and completely re-render these from scratch, because I'd already rendered them, you know, all together with the cymbals in the room mic, and it was a pain in the ass. You're probably going to hear me say that a lot. There were a lot of things in this project that were a pain in the ass. But I do want to start here with the classic, good old classic top-down mixing. And let's see if I actually have that saved here. You know, I think it's default master. I love that there's one here. I have no idea what this is, but I have a preset here called Ouch My Ego, which, damn. Boom. I think that is gray thing, mix rack. Okay, cool. So just to walk through what's happening here. So there's a couple of EQ moves. This was, I think, I took this almost verbatim from, I don't think it was the Nolly Creative Live. It was one of the, I think it was the URM Academy course that he did, where he was mixing a tune from Periphery 3, but it's the same concept that I explained earlier. So, there's really not a whole lot happening here. There's a bass boost. So actually, let's. So obviously realizing that these are not balanced right now, but just you can hear the difference immediately, and I'll actually turn this volume. Excuse me. No, I'll leave it on. But I'll just go ahead and toggle these on and off, and you can immediately hear the difference. We gotta lower that bass. Man, our levels are all over the place right now, but I think you can probably hear that especially this one, this little high-end boost here, really just there's like a whole dimension of the mix that just falls away completely without it. And again, like, you're gonna probably end up doing this to like a ton of tracks anyway, so it makes sense to just go ahead and start with it. Now this is going to take some doing to set up, but just real quick, it's a very fast attack, very fast release, 4-to-1 ratio, classic, classic stuff. I set that high pass filter at 45 because I really don't want it. I really do not want this triggered by like sub bass frequencies from the kick drum. It's like the kick drum is gonna move the needle a little bit, but you're mostly looking for the snare to be moving it. We've got a nice little virtual tape machine here that does some kind of fun stuff. I have no idea why we have a limiter. Oh, because this is supposed to be on the master fader. Duh. That explains why everything was going to hell a second ago. Let's try that again. Okay. That might be hard to hear if you don't have headphones on, but it really just you get the picture. And so one thing I see here immediately is that snare probably needs to come up in volume. Just to make sure that we really hit that. That's a pretty good place to start, I think. And so this is where we're going to start. We're going to start by we're not going to worry too much about the other instruments right now. And I'm thinking we'll probably go ahead and craft the drum mix and then probably call it for tonight. I sort of, just to emphasize, mixing the record took weeks, and I sort of expected that we were not going to get through all of this tonight. But so there's a couple things first. That was one other thing I wanted to point out. So I also have this here, rest of the mix fader, and that is quite literally everything in the mix except the drums, because. And honestly, that was something that I, if I remember right, came up with on my own during the making of the album, because I frequently, and again, sort of when you're at that last stage of trying to get stuff perfectly balanced, I found myself needing the guitars. I felt like I had a good like guitar and bass balance, and the leads and all that other crap was sitting where it was supposed to, but I was having problems with either the drums being too loud or vice versa, and I found myself like needing this on its own fader because I didn't want to mess too much with the relationship between the drums and this bus compressor here. So that's a fun game of like push and pull when you're trying to kind of, and again, especially when you have a session that is this complex, you're gonna end up doing a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of like trying to find, you hear something that's screwed up and you're, just frantically scrolling through trying to figure out what on earth is causing it. So like I said before, we have a snare reverb track here. So let's maybe actually start. And we should probably process the snare first. But one thing we can do is set up our parallel compression. And if you're not familiar with the concept, basically you take a bus that is, so we've got kick, snare, toms, cymbals, but cymbals in this case is the overheads. So there's shells in these mics too. I called that cymbals because that's right. This in particular came with a bunch of spot mics for like every cymbal. Which, you know, normally you're probably just going to have like a hi-hat mic and like an overhead, a set of overheads. But anyways, but that's how I set it up. And then I also ended up routing the snare reverb in here too. But essentially what you're doing, all that stuff goes to a compressor. And you can see I have this set at minus 18 dB because it's buried under the mix, but you send it to a compressor and you just absolutely demolish it. And I'll show an example of what that probably sounds like. So I used the soft tube FET compressor on the record, sort of the classic choice for something like this. But recently, I grabbed this talkback limiter from Corneth Audio, and this thing, I am in love with it. And it really kind of is a one-trick pony that really only does this sound, but boy, does it do this sound. So let's have a listen here. So just briefly, this is essentially what you're hearing. We're going to have to, or actually I have to kill that volume knob for a second. So what you're essentially hearing here is you're hearing the entire drum mix except for the rooms. But here's talkback limiter. And it's probably a little bit too much, but I'll be honest, that doesn't make you want to just ram your fist into a brick wall, then you're doing it wrong. And that's what I mean. For this sound, for this just, you know, death and destruction, you know, just hitting something with a hammer, smashed into oblivion sound. It auto-muted. That's funny. Too much. But so we're gonna turn that volume back on so it's so I'm gonna bring that snare down a little bit because I think processing is gonna probably change the way these things are all related to each other later, but you can kind of already see that what tends to happen here is you kind of end up with this very precarious balancing act where it's like sometimes you're like, man, I really feel like that snare needs to be louder, but if the snare goes louder, then you got to bring the bus compressor down, and you know there's a whole host of, you know, all of these different elements are all kind of related to each other, and it's at a certain point, it gets very difficult to change one thing without having to change a bunch of other stuff too. And that's really why it's important to get it right at the source, get it right on the way in so you don't have to fix things later. And then B, like, you know, it's just as important to to, hell am I saying? It's just as important to get things right early in the mixing process, because otherwise, again, you're going to spend most of your time troubleshooting and not actually like progressing. So I'm just going to really quickly like throw in a snare reverb here. We may change it later, but I know I used rev plate last time. I kind of want to, I'm kind of intentionally making different choices this time around, just for fun. Let's actually use that soft tube reverb. I like this one quite a bit. It just has a very like distinctive sound. I like it better already. Oh, right, we gotta turn that volume knob back on. And one thing I'm probably gonna do here is just go ahead and probably don't need it, but I'm gonna just put a really conservative low pass filter, or I'm sorry, high pass filter over, just lock it at 100 hertz. You know, I don't actually think any bass is getting through here into the reverb, but I tend to end up coming back and adding like a, you know, a high-end boost to the snare verb at some point anyway, but that's probably happening later. All right. Kick drum. This kick is going to need a lot of work, as I'm sure you could probably tell. Right now, it's incredibly like boxy sounding. It's very like, there's some fun, but like honestly, most of the attack you're hearing is from that sample. Like, and part of the reason I ended up burying this, if I remember right, is just if you bring this too far forward, you end up with like too much of that plastic, like clicky sound. And that is always the danger with kick drums is, you know, you can so easily overdo it. But that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with a just classic EQ. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and repeat this section while we make some moves here. And I'm not going to rely on the spectrum analyzer too much, but I generally sort of follow the philosophy of trying to keep things balanced. We're probably going to want an equivalent amount of high and low end in here. But first thing I'm going to do is find that boxy sound that I just despise. I think it's like right there. Whatever that is, I do not like that. So that is, oops, that's gone. And we can honestly probably make this like a, nope. That's not what I meant to do. 0.5, nope. What the hell am I doing? That was 1. Oh, I see what I did. Okay. Nope. I forget how cues work. My bad. Make that a little bit more surgical. Whatever that sound is, I do not like that. However, I do probably want to bring up one of the things that I think is important to find in here, because you're going to need it later on when you're trying to figure out how to make the bass and the kick drum work together without fighting each other, is you gotta kind of poke around in here. Make this a 2 because I really want to emphasize this point. You want to poke around in here and find the fundamental note of the kick drum, and it's way down here for this kick drum. And I know this just because I've done this before. It's just right around 60 hertz. Right about 64. Already like where this is going. So next up, we're gonna just and screw it. 10 dB boost on the high end. Maybe that's what we need here. That's already sounding much more like a heavy metal kick drum. And I think I want to take out just a smidge of whatever that is. It's not really making too much of a difference, but I think we're all right. And so how's that sound with the rest of the drums? That snare is going to need a volume boost bad. But we'll get there. So now we gotta compress the kick drum. And this is the classic, like, you're trying to really hone in on that just smack sound. Bah, bah, bah. And it helps if you talk like me while you do it. My go-to for kick drums right now is Empirical Labs official plugin of the distressor that is distressingly called Arouser, which is just not what I want to be thinking about while I'm mixing a heavy metal song, but that's just me. Far be it for me to pass judgment, but that's just me. So right now I'm sort of leaning towards possibly a slower attack. And you can see if we max out the attack, we lose that kick transient, and as we sweep that back, we can hear it start to come back. And I'm always just going to be clicking around in here just to see what some of these different settings sound like. One of the things I really dig about this is this little saturation thing. I very rarely use it too much, but it's at least kind of an interesting thing to play around with, especially with things like this, because it's another way of maybe shaving off that transient a little bit, possibly. But it's kind of another way of like messing around with that, like, you know, with the amount of like, you know, faux analog distortion you're getting in essence. And let's start with just a fast release. I dare say, I think we actually need a little bit more high end. Say it ain't so. Yeah, there it is. And you may notice this is before the compressor, so we're actually changing a little bit of the way the compressor is reacting here. But anyways, I am feeling pretty good about that sound for now. And like I said so earlier, but seriously, you know, just hop in chat if you have questions about anything I'm doing here. I'm sort of trying to walk through it as I go, but you know, it's always a bit of a challenge to try to, you know, explain every single step you're doing. But I'm liking this kick sound right now. If we listen to it. It sounds weird right now, but that kick is like right up in your grill, which is where it needs to be in a metal mix. Because kick is one of those things, and there actually isn't a ton of double bass in this song, but any place where there's like rapid double bass parts, it's just gonna go away. You're gonna lose it if you're not able to basically simultaneously cut through the mix and also have that sort of nice little thumpy bass response coming with it too. And on that note, let's move on to the snare. And this one's a little tricky because there's quite a bit of the snare sound that's coming from, well, two places. One, oops, there it is. The snare verb. Actually, not as much as I thought, but massive amount of that snare sound is coming from the room mics. So it's always interesting to be in here and kind of making decisions like this in a vacuum. And you know, most of the time, you know, people are going to tell you should probably actually be sort of making these decisions while you're listening honestly, I remember this snare needing a ton of work, but I honestly am not hating where we're starting, to be honest. All right, let's start with... Do we want to just throw Pro Q on there? Or do we want to try something else? Nah, honestly, I'm feeling it with Pro Q today. Let's just roll with that. So definitely something I learned just from the amount of, God, again, the amount of troubleshooting I did putting the record together. Things about snares. That little nubby nub there, right here. That's where all the snare beef lives. Up here is where the stick attack lives. It is so incredibly easy to make snares sound weird by making EQ moves, and I actually don't recommend doing massive amounts of work here because, man, and again, like, you know, say we... Because you could go, oh, maybe it's too deep sounding. Let me take out a little bit of that like fundamental tone, and then it just ends up sounding like you're just cracking a toothpick. But if you and 100%, this needs to come up in the mix. This needs to be like a +4 at least. So that's where I would start with this. I think it needs a little bit of high end, but I'm just so gun shy about making aggressive EQ moves on snares that, you know, sometimes you need it, but I would so much rather get that sound from, and that's why I went through all the effort of adding in these samples from Giga Drums, because I would so much rather get that sound naturally than through an EQ, because I'm sure that there are like more talented producers out there that can maybe do this a little bit better than I'm doing it, but man, you know, again, even more so because like we're accustomed to like kick drums being, you know, very mechanical sounding, but snare, like, your snare is everything, and if it does not sound good, then your mix doesn't sound good, period. So I like where that is for now. We're gonna compress. Could use a rouser potentially. Could use about CLA 76. We haven't used him yet. And this is one where I think we need further apart hits. All right, whatever's going on there, I like. And just that very really just makes it's the difference between, you know, the drummer giving the snare a love tap and the drummer like hitting it with all of the force of Thor's hammer. It's night and day. And it's worth noting, so because this is being sent to parallel compression and reverb, we're actually hearing both of those layered in, which I prefer to do it that way because you immediately see how those are interacting, because without it, it's just much harder to envision how this is all going to sound in a mix. So speaking of which, so just for fun, let's see how far we've come. I'm already feeling better about that. And let's briefly revisit how we're doing on that master. And, you know, same thing. This is sort of, you know, I'm always kind of constantly doing this as I'm working through and processing each thing. And it's just kind of the nature of the game. And I thought I was... Actually, this I want to hear without the reverb. I feel like I want to... It might not matter, but I kind of want to maybe lower the amount of time that you hear the snare wires, if that makes any goddamn sense. Nah. Nope. Whatever I was hearing, I think I'm okay with it. Nah, never mind. Actually, I think I'm cool with that. Okay. Toms, I think, are next, probably. Okay, yeah. Toms are not too bad. And if you've probably seen anybody mix anything before, you've probably seen all of these EQ moves, so we'll go quick. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and repeat. My apologies for this. This is going to get annoying, but... what you're looking for is you're looking for that. You're looking for that boxy sound, and you want to kill that. And then what I ended up doing is once I have one, oh, hey, what's up, Nightingales? Yo, seriously, I know FabFilter shit's expensive, but dude, ProQ has like changed my life, and the work of doing this kind of stuff, and even like working with voiceovers and things like that, the ability to just solo a band and move it around and, is just invaluable. It is, I cannot, the hype is real. The hype is real for ProQ, for serious. But so typically what I do, these are all going to move per tom, but all I'm going to do is just copy these settings over and then kind of adjust them. Doom, doom. And it's that same game for each of these. It is finding, just like the kick drum, it's find the fundamental and then find that boxy sound and get that shit out of there. See how that sounds. Oh, and that's worth noting. There's actually a little bit of toms going to the snare reverb also, just for fun. And one of the things, I remember this now, the toms are actually getting sent a little bit less to the parallel compression. Let's actually increase that a little bit. So let's have a listen here. I want to just hear these together. And typically what's going to happen on the master tom bus is not that one. We want probably just waves L1 because I'm lazy. Because I think there's a little bit of... Although, again, I guess we need to do this listening to the whole mix, but... You can see the toms are like jumping out just a little bit, and I kind of want to bring those down a little bit. Oh, I'm an idiot. Hold on. And essentially what you're trying to do is basically just get it to where it's just like kissing the top of those transients. Like that's actually probably too much. And this is just a balancing thing, is all it really is. And we're probably going to take the master fader down like 2 dB. What phrase there, Redengales? What doesn't sound like a music thing? Kissing the top of the transients. Well, you know, it's just, you know, kind of what you got to do when you're a producer sometimes is you got to, it's like kissing frogs. You got to kiss a lot of transients before you get your final mix or something. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just being gross now. All right, I think we're in business. I think we're doing all right here. So again, just for fun, let's just turn all those plugins off. Except that didn't work. Nope, and I just got rid of them, I think. Oops. What am I doing? Oh, duh. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot how Reaper works for a second. There we go. So I think we've come a long way already. Redengales, this is just for fun, honestly. This is the first song off of the Deviation Notice EP. Just curious to see if I could, you know, this is kind of a self-challenge to remix this song and see, you know, if we end up at a sound that is, you know, better in scare quotes than the album mix, because especially towards the end there, you know, it was definitely like a I don't know quite how to describe it, but by the end I was super over it and really ready to just go ahead and be done. And like you know, and I know I'm far from the only person to experience this phenomenon, but like I can't bear to listen to it now because there's stuff on it that bothers me. Perfect example. We're definitely not getting there tonight, but there's this part early in the song. Let's go out to the full mix real quick. Nope. Right here, this one snare hit. To me, that snare hit is basically it's if music was English, that snare hit it's like taking a breath before you start a sentence. And so to me, that snare, something about it needs to, and I think it literally needs a reverb just on that one snare hit. Like it really needs to like draw out a little bit before we enter that next line. And it's one of those things that like was in my head the entire time I was working with the song and when I was writing it and everything. And I just, you know, it's weird to say you ran out of time with your own like project that no one cares about, like not trying to be self-deprecating, but like, you know, with your own thing that you're doing on your own time. But like, you know, there was definitely a bit of like, a bit of like, you know, I really need to like be over this thing and not stress about it anymore. But as a result, there's like aspects of it that that bother me. And I know I'm far from the only person to ever experience that, but still. What else? All right, so we got symbols and rooms. Can we get through symbols and rooms in like another, probably 20 minutes? Okay, let's do that. So, and I kind of want to check in again on our instrument bus here and see how that. So see how the snare is basically the only thing that's actually triggering that compressor to stomp down. And without it, it literally sounds like there's one guy hitting a snare way out in front of the rest of the band, and the mix really just starts to collapse without it. So, you know, thanks, Nolly, for giving me a bunch of tips and tricks to steal. I mean, that's literally how all producers do it. You know, everybody's always watching each other's work and, you know, learning new crapoli. Okay. All right, so we've limited the toms, compressed that snare. And there's probably more. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to do with this kick. I wanted to try. I can't remember if I did this on the album mix or not, but I wanted to try throw in a tape machine on here. And there's something about, it's really hard to explain, and again, it's super hard to hear without headphones on, but something specifically this 30ep setting, I couldn't really hear anything messing with these, but something about specifically that 30ep setting does something to the low end response that I like. It feels sort of, it feels just that littlest, tiniest bit boomier, and which again, I think we're gonna need later on, especially like trying to make it work with the guitars, or with the bass, with the bass. So we got like a bunch of spot mics here. And they're all, you know, they're all already panned and level set and everything. I think I will probably take this hi-hat and okay, that's an annoying sound. Actually, basically this is what I'm trying to not even get rid of, just dip out of the, hey, you need a little bit of, because and same thing like this. I always, you know, when I first started doing this, I was always like, oh, well, you gotta boost the high end to like bring the cymbals out, and then I ended up with these mixes that just sounded like someone was like crumpling tinfoil in your ear. And honestly, there really isn't much bass below like 200 hertz, so I'm not even going to bother putting a high-pass filter on this. We probably will compress it some. However, what do we want to use here? My lovely toolbox here. I think we'll maybe try the 2A. Actually, in retrospect, I think I like where we were going with that, but I think I want to control how much of that transient is coming through. Thinking about maybe using the 76, but you know what? Screw it. We'll just go with Pro C. Nope. I don't actually like what that's doing. And same thing, I don't think that's like super duper necessary, but it's just kind of a nice little nifty way to maybe bring those shells out just a smidge. What else are we doing to these? I think we'll probably let them be for now. I like where we're going with this. Actually, yeah, we'll boost. That seems to be kind of where those shells live, so we'll bring those out a little bit too. And again, you know, I sort of have a similar philosophy here to the snare that I really don't want to actually mess with these too much. I want them to sit in the mix properly, but I really don't want to do a ton of like, you know, crazy EQ moves because that's actually too quiet. Yeah, no, Atari's been chilling behind me literally the entire time that we've been online. He's been just sleeping back there. Little man. Don't even have to have anybody summon Tari. Huh. Same thing. I felt like that hi-hat was just jumping out a little bit too much. And is there another way that we could mess with the cymbals? Anything neat for anything neat we can do in our sort of drum bag of tricks? Doesn't really look like it. I think we're all right. Okay. So, rooms. Now, in this mix, rooms are... And these are not super, like, long, drawn out room sounds. So they're not doing the, like, heavy lifting of sort of creating space and ambience that the reverb is. These are largely going to be... Let's actually start top down first, and we will probably see how we feel about the EQ. And I think here I am going to want to use a high-pass filter because I really don't... I want to be very careful about how much of these bass frequencies get through. Yeah, I think that's the right amount. I like where that's going. So other things that we're going to probably do here is we're definitely compressing it. And maybe here we'll try the... Nah, actually, we'll roll with 76 here because same thing. I'm going to probably want to be very careful with the transients. So same thing here. This is the classic, like, fast attack, fast release kind of. We're trying to make that squishy, squashy sound. And I really just love this mono room mic so much. It's just a cool sound. It makes me happy. And same thing here. I actually took the time to print down room samples for those Get Good drum samples that ended up in here. Because same thing, it's needed. Otherwise, these just kind of helps fill out the whole sound. So, all right. See how we feel about. So I actually think we can actually take this parallel compression and bring it up quite a bit. Same thing, it's just one of those things that, man, just makes it like doesn't seem like a lot, and then you take it away and it sounds like crap without it. So and so to echo my point earlier, now that snare boost is probably too much. Because generally speaking here, we're probably shooting for like 3 dB-ish of gain reduction, so. So I'm feeling pretty good about these drums. I don't know about you, chat, but I am feeling good about where we're at, actually. One last fun bit before I think I will sign off for the night is we will go in, and I really want to try to balance the rest of these instruments. The problem is that bass doesn't have a speaker sim on it, but maybe just. bass needs a ton of work before it's even going to be audible in the mix at all. But I think that is where we will go ahead and sign off for the night. So, hey, I know it's been a while, and there was a whole bunch of crap going on there at the beginning of the stream that I think some of you were here for, but I really appreciate everybody who came and hung out and chatted with me and sat with me through this process of making fake drums sound cool, maybe. I'll definitely be back soon. Let's actually make damn sure we save this. And we'll just go ahead and pick up right where we left off next time around. A couple of things. I have a Discord server now. The link should be in my profile here on Twitch, so feel free to join my Discord and, I don't know, hang out, talk music, talk about me, I guess. You know, I've got other social media I'm not really active on, but, you know, Facebook, Instagram, all that crap. EP's on Spotify if you want to check it out. All that good stuff. I'll probably be streaming music on here too at some point again. Other than that, oh, and check out End of Your Rope, the band that I play bass in. Played a little bit of their music beforehand here. Other than that, hey, I really appreciate it. So have a good night, everybody. I'm gonna go find somebody to raid here real quick if anybody I follow is still online. So peace out, y'all.